Hi guys, it's Ms. Miner, and today we are going to, this is review day 1, so 7th grade review, and we are going to be working on combining integers. Okay, so what is an integer? We have to remember back from 7th grade what an integer is. And remember, an integer is a positive or a negative whole number. So the thing that makes integers just different from any other is that it could be positive or negative. It has a sign. The positive and the negative are what we call its sign. Okay? And we want to combine those integers. And so combining, remember, we're going to be putting more than one thing together, putting different numbers together. Just like when we make a cake, we put ingredients together. Well, that's what we're doing here, except we're working with integers. And we're going to use multiply, divide, add, and subtract today. All right, a negative number, remember, is just a number, some number that's less than 0. So on our number line, it's to the left. And a positive number is a number that's greater than 0. So there's some good vocabulary that we need for our lesson today. All right, so if I write this problem, -3 plus 4, and I'm just going to write it out in words. But just like I said, -3 plus 4. How do I know that this is a -3 and that this was a plus? How do I know that? Well, maybe I don't, right? Because another way that I could say this is minus 3 plus 4. And even another way that I could say this would be -3 combined with a positive 4. And all of these three things would be correct. Why is that? Why is this a negative and a minus? Well, because the words subtract and negative are synonyms. And if you remember from English class, a synonym is two words that have the same meaning. They are the same thing. Over here, add and positive, that's the same thing. I can say this is a positive 4. I can call this a plus 4. I can call this a positive 4. And they all mean the same thing. I can say this is a subtract 3. I could say this is a minus 3. I could say it was a -3. Because all of those things are the same thing. Nothing is different by saying it's minus or negative. Those are both correct. They mean the same thing. They have the same definition. So a lot of times what I see when I am working with students and they're working on combining integers, they get stuck because they're unsure what to do. So this is supposed to say up here, party or battle. This is just a trick that I use to help me combine integers, okay? And this works when I'm adding and subtracting integers. So right now we're just going to work with addition and subtraction. We're not going to worry about multiply and divide just yet. So let's say I'm in a parking lot and I'm partying down with all my BYU fans. Oh, here, hold please. I've got to get my arrow so I can move some of these things over here. And I've got all my family members and they're getting together, and then I've got some more BYU fans. Is this going to be a party or a battle? Well, all of these BYU fans are going to get together and it's going to be a party, right? So I actually end up with more BYU fans. If I have one group and then they combine with another group, I get more, right? But when I have signs, positive and negative signs, then I have to talk about they're like having two different teams, okay? So we're going to say BYU is like the negative team, and U of U is the positive team, And so all of these numbers are negatives, right? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 5 over here. Why? Because there are 5 BYU people on this side. And then I have negative 3 over here on this side, right? So in math, if I have a negative 5 and a negative 3, this is going to be a party, and all of these guys are going to join up in the party, right? Because they're both on the same team. They're both negatives, right? And so they all join up. So how many total negatives do I have now? Negative 8. So a sign is like its own team, right? When I start out with a certain amount of negatives and I combine it with even more negatives, I get even more negative. So I know that sounds crazy, but that's the way it works. And when I have a problem like this, and I ask, sometimes students think a lot about, how am I adding these together? Am I subtracting these from each other? And it can be confusing. But if they think about it as being negatives and positives are kind of like their own team, then it might make it a little bit easier for you. So that's just a different way that you can think about it. So what if I have 2 different teams, right? Because we said party or battle. So we've talked about a party when they're on the same team and they all get together. So we started out with negative 8 total BYUs over here. Well, what if, oops, now in my same parking lot, I don't get BYU players, I get some U of U players, right? So now I'm combining my negative 8 with a positive 5. Well, these are 2 different teams, right? So this is going to be a battle. And they're going to, this guy over here is going to take that guy out. This guy over here is going to take that guy out. That guy, that guy, that guy. And who's going to win the battle, right? We got to figure it out. Well, in this case, BYU is going to win the battle. Why? Because it has 3 more additional guys that can like hop on the pile, right? They're a bigger team. And so the winner is going to be BYU. By how many? How many more players do they have? Or how many more people on their team do they have? They have 3 extra teammates. So when I combine a negative 8 with a positive 5, my result is negative 3. Why? Because I have 3 more negatives than I had positives. I hope that kind of helps you see this in a different way, but let's practice just a little bit. Okay, over on this side, I'm combining a negative 8 with a positive 6. Is this a party or a battle? Well, this is a battle. I have 2 different teams here, positives and negatives, right? And so who's going to win this battle? The negatives, or the BYU team, right? Because they have more negatives. They have more people on their party. How many more do they have? 2. Negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. Okay, down here at the bottom, I have 2 negative numbers. I have negative 5 combined with a negative 8. Is this a party or a battle? Negative 5 minus 8, right? Well, these guys are all going to combine together. They're going to be even more negative. And so negative 5 minus 8 is negative 13. Why? Because all of these guys down here, all of these guys are going to combine together to get even more negatives. I hope that kind of helps you think about this in a different way if it's been confusing to add and subtract negatives before. Here's another opportunity to practice. A good idea would be to pause the video right now and then try these out on your own and see if you can do it. Then turn the video back on and check your answers. I'm going to go through it. So up here, I have 2 different teams. I have negative and positive. And we're going to combine a negative 6 with a positive 7. Is this a party or a battle? It's a battle. Who's going to win? The positive team. Why? Because they have more positive numbers than there were negative numbers, right? How many more positive numbers are there? There's one extra positive number. So that's my result. Over here, I have two of the same team. So these are going to combine together to be even more negative, right? There's going to be a party here. And it's still going to be the negative team because that's all I've got, right? Our negative numbers. How many negatives do I have here, or how many negative guys, if you will, are at the party? 21. And there's my result. Now, when I have more than one integer that I'm combining, the rule is I just kind of work left to right. And so hopefully that's what you did. There are lots of different ways to do it, but if you start on the left and kind of work to the right, then you won't go astray. You won't kind of get mixed up, if you will. So I just kind of start on the left and work to the right. And I'm going to combine first the 14 and the negative 11. Is the 14 a positive or a negative? Well, it's a positive number because anytime there's not a sign written in front of a number, it is automatically positive. Okay, so you can write your positive in there if that helps you to see that these are two different teams here, right? So this is going to be a battle. Who's going to win? The positives are going to win. Why? Because there were more positive guys in this battle. How many more? There were 3 extra guys, right? Okay, so I have combined the 14 and the 11. I'm going to drop down the extra positive 3 and combine these two now. So all I did was drop this one down so that I could combine it. So now I have a positive 3 and a positive 3. They're on the same team, right? They're both positive. How many positives do I have? I have 6. Okay, great. I hope you guys are checking your work and that you are doing okay and feeling all right about it. All right, over here, I'm going to combine a negative 25 and a positive 25. This is a battle because I have different signs, right? I have different teams, if you will. And the only thing here is that nobody's going to win because I have the same number of players on each team. And so this is going to be 0. Because if I subtract 25 and then I add 25 back, well, my total is going to be 0, right? Okay. All right. I'm going to hold off on working with these down here for just a minute, okay? If you're following along in your notes, then just kind of cross those out for a minute. We're going to address what's going on there in just a minute, but this is just another opportunity. If you didn't do so well with the previous example, so if you maybe got this one wrong, okay, and when you checked your work you got it wrong, guess what? Now you get another chance to try again. Try working left to right, pause the video, see how you do, then come back and check your answer. Okay, this is why this is kind of the tricky parts. Okay, I hope you tried it out. I hope you paused the video, but let's kind of work through this one left to right. The first thing I'm going to do is combine the negative 4 and the positive 5. This is going to be a battle. Who's going to win? The positives are going to win. And how many more teammates did they have? They had 1 extra teammate, right? Negative 4 plus 5. Okay, then I'm going to drop this one down and I'm going to combine these two together. I have a positive and a negative number, and so which team is going to win? The negatives are going to win. Why? Because they had 1 extra guy. Then I'm going to drop down my positive 1. I have a negative 1 plus 1. That equals 0. Okay, I hope you guys are doing all right. I hope you're feeling okay about this. If you need to go back and rewatch, feel free to rewind. Watch it as many times as you'd like. We're going to move forward. We're going to work on some addition and multiplication and division now. And the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out how do I know? I'm going to move this guy up just a tiny bit so we can see him. He's important. Okay, so we've been working with addition and subtraction, and party and battle work really well when I have addition and subtraction, but it doesn't work when I have multiplication and division. So how do I know when I'm going to use multiplication and division instead of addition and subtraction? And the difference is I'm going to see these signs in here. I'm going to have some parentheses, or I'm going to have one of these dots, and those two things mean multiply. Okay, and if I have division, I'm going to either see the divide sign right here, or I'm going to see a fraction bar. This looks funny here, but it's actually just supposed to be a fraction bar. Let me see if I can maybe get rid of one of those things there. Let's see if that will, oh boy, I'm really not doing very good here. Okay, anyways, this is just what was supposed to be one big bar. I know what I can do to make this work. Let's just turn this into one big bar. There we go. There we go. Now it's just one big fraction bar. Okay, so whenever we see a problem and it has one of these signs in it, I'm either going to multiply or I'm going to divide. And if I see parentheses, I'm going to only use this dot very rarely. You'll mostly see parentheses, and parentheses means two things. I'm going to have to look for two things. I'm going to simplify, and I'm going to multiply. That's what I want to do every single time I see parentheses, okay? And if I see a fraction bar, the fraction bar means simplify and divide. And so I'm going to look, let's kind of work through some of these problems right here. I have parentheses, so I know it's multiply, but I'm also going to check and see, is there anything that I need to simplify? Is there anything in there? Well, this is just a -4, so no. So if there's nothing to simplify, I can move on and just do the multiplying. So I'm going to multiply now. What do I multiply? Whatever is right outside the parentheses. And once I know that I'm multiplying, then I can follow the rules of multiplication. And they're right down here. Here's the steps for multiplying. The first thing I want to do is figure out what is going to be the sign of my result. And the way that I do that is the answer is always going to be positive, unless I like to call this guy my dozy man. He's my rule, okay? And he's dozy man, or you could call him winking man, but you can see this face down here. He's telling me my rule for multiplication and division. And the only time I get a negative result, the only time, is if I have opposite signs. That's the only time. Every single other time when I'm multiplying or dividing, I'm going to get a positive answer. So I always look to see, are the signs different or are they the same? Because if they're the same, my result is going to be positive. So look right here. I have the same sign. That means my result's going to be positive. So I found the sign, and then I want to multiply the numbers together. 4 times 20 is 80. Now I'm done. So I'm going to check to see if I simplify, and then when I multiply, I'm going to do the sign, and then I'm going to multiply any numbers. Okay, if I have division, I'm going to follow exactly the same steps. I'm going to look and see if I need to simplify anything, and that means my numerator or denominator. So when will I ever have to simplify a numerator or a denominator? If you see a problem, like on your homework assignment, that has something like this, then you need to simplify. It's almost like there are a little invisible set of pretend parentheses around the numerator and the denominator. You need to simplify first before you do any dividing, okay? the fraction bar is a grouping symbol that groups numbers into a numerator and a denominator. And so we always have to check to see if there's anything that I need to simplify in the numerator or the denominator. So if you have a problem that looks like this, you would have to do some simplifying first before you could do the dividing. All right, but in this case, let's just do something really simple. Let's just do some dividing. I have 36 divided by -6. The first thing I want to do is figure out what's the sign going to be in my answer. And so I have a positive and a negative, opposite signs. What's my result going to be when I have opposite signs? Well, here's my dozy man, and he tells me that opposite signs is the only time I get a negative result. And so my answer here is going to be negative. And then all I have to do is go through and divide the numbers. So 36 divided by 6 is 6. And there's my answer. Okay, a good idea would be to pause the video and try this one on your own. But I'm just going to go through it really quick. The first thing we want to do is check to see if I need to simplify anything. Well, these are just two numbers, so I don't need to simplify anything. So I can go ahead and divide. What do I want to do when I divide? I want to, excuse me. I want to check and see what's the sign of my result going to be. Well, these are both negative, and when I have the same sign, remember, my result is always positive. And so my answer here is going to be positive. And then the last thing I do is I want to divide the numbers. So 24 divided by 8 is 3. And now I'm done. So what happens if I have multiple numbers that I'm multiplying or dividing? Well, really, it's the exact same as if I'm adding or subtracting. I really just start on the left and work my way to the right, okay? And that's going to work every time. In the interest of time, I'm going to show you one additional way that you can kind of like make it quicker. I'm going to show you how to, these other two I'm not going to worry about so much just because I don't want this video to be so long. But I'm going to show you that you can check for even or odd negatives, okay? So first, let's just do one where we work it from left to right. Let's do that first. Okay, so if I work this one from left to right, I'm going to combine the first two together. So my rules are, first, find the sign of my result. And then second, multiply the numbers. Okay, so this one's a positive, this one's a negative. When I have opposite signs, my result is negative. So my answer here for -3 times 2 is going to be -6 because 3 times 2 is 6. Then I'm going to drop down the next one and multiply those two together. -6 times -2. Now I have the same sign, right? Negative and negative. So that answer is going to be a positive. 6 times 2 is 12. And then I'm going to drop down the -1. And now I have an opposite sign again. So my result is going to be negative. And 12 times 1 is 12. So you can always just work yourself left to right, and that will work. Now, here's kind of the tip or the trick that might make it a little bit quicker. Okay? I'm going to change colors. If I have an even number of negative signs, so over here I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 negative signs. That's an even number of negative signs. My result is going to be positive. If I have an odd number, let's do that in a different color just to like make sure we're highlighting it. Okay. If I have an odd number of negative signs, like over here, 1, 2, 3, right? 3 is an odd number. Then my result is going to be negative. And look, over here, we got a negative result when we just did our problem, right? So if I remember this trick of even number of negatives is positive, odd number is negative, then I can just count up my negatives and say, oh, there's 4 negatives in this problem, so my result's going to be positive. And then all I have to do is go through and multiply the numbers. 4 times 2 is 8, times 1 is still 8, times 2 is 16, times 1 is still 16. And then I'm done. Okay? So that can make it faster if you do that. But if that doesn't help you, then just work it left to right and you'll never get it wrong. Okay? You'll never be led astray if you do it left to right. But there are some little tricks and tips that you can do to help you kind of do it faster. But I just want you to choose the ideas that are helpful for you to use, and then those are the ones that you use. All right, so here's another little tip for you guys. Always think about parentheses as being multiplication, okay? Whenever I see parentheses, I always think I want to simplify something or multiply something, okay? And it could be one, it could be both of those things. In this case, I'm looking at these parentheses and there's nothing inside the parentheses that I look for. And the next thing I do is I look directly next to the parentheses and see what I see. And right now it's a minus sign. And so really what this is telling me is that it wants me to simplify or multiply, if you will, these signs together. This number, this positive 5 essentially has 2 signs, 2 different signs, right? This is a minus positive 5 or a minus plus. And that doesn't really make sense. So what I want to do is simplify this, and I follow the rules of multiplication because of the parentheses in order to simplify it, okay? So, when I have a minus plus, those are opposite signs. And so my result is going to make it be negative. If I have the same sign, my result, of course, would then be positive. The only time I'm going to get a negative result is when I have opposite signs. So if I see a negative plus something, it's going to turn that number negative. If I see a negative something, it's going to turn that number positive. So this problem right here simplifies to 7 minus 5. And then I've done what the parentheses are telling me to do. They're gone. I'm all done with that. And so now this is just an addition or subtraction problem that's left over, because that's the next step down in my order of operations, right? I can do the addition and subtraction now. And because we talked about party and battle, this makes this a really easy problem, right? This is a positive 7 combined with a negative 5, so this is a battle, and the positives are going to win by how many? 2. I can simplify this one down here. This has a double sign out in front of it. And so what I want to do is, sometimes teachers have told you when you see a double sign to just write it in like this, right? But this is why. Because I'm following the rules of multiplication, because my parentheses are telling me to simplify with multiplication. And so I'm just simplifying this double sign that's here. I'm going to end up with -3 plus 9. And then all of my parentheses are taken care of. All of my double sign is gone. And so all I have to do is the addition and subtraction. Okay, so now I'm combining the -3 plus 9. This is a party or a battle. And so this is a battle where my positives are going to win by 6. Because there's 6 more positives here than there are negatives here. I hope that helps kind of maybe clarify a little bit about when I have those double signs like that, because that can be a little bit confusing, right? But let's try some practice problems now. A good idea would be to maybe pause the video and then practice on your own, see if you can make it work. If you get stuck, I'm going to walk through these really quick. Whenever I see parentheses, I always look there first, because in my order of operations, remember PEMDAS, it says that I should do parentheses first. So I always look at the parentheses. And the parentheses here, oh, here's one of my double signs out in front. So the first thing I have to do is get rid of those double signs. And that's going to help me make this an easy addition and subtraction problem. So I just drop down the -7. I'm not doing anything with that yet. And then I'm going to make these double signs. I'm going to multiply, essentially, a negative times a negative, which gives me a positive 3. Now I have a party versus battle situation. See, when I simplify these double signs, I'm doing my order of operations. I'm doing the multiply and divide part. And so once I've done that, once I've simplified, then I've taken care of the multiply and divide part, and all that's left is the addition and subtraction part. So this right here is addition and subtraction. So I ask myself, is this a party or a battle? It's a battle, right? Which team's going to win? The negative team. And then by how many? 4. Okay, let's try another one. Let's see this whole thing again. I always look at the parentheses first. And what I can see, here's another double sign. This is a positive -3. And so I want to simplify that down. I use the multiplication rules because I have parentheses in there. So positive times a negative makes that a -3. Then all I have to do is drop the 5 down, and I have 5 minus 3. Well, that's an easy subtraction problem that I've been doing since kindergarten, and I know the result in my head. It's 2. 5 minus 3 is 2, right? Okay. Well, what happens if I have lots of parentheses and double signs happening, right? Well, I just work left to right, okay? I find my first set of parentheses, just like when I'm reading a book. We usually work left to right. I find my first set of parentheses. And what do I notice? It has a double sign. I use my rule of multiplication in order to get rid of that double sign, because that's confusing. That's no good. I don't want that. So positive times a negative gives me a -12. And then the very next parentheses over, I'm all done with that part, is here's another double sign. So I'm going to simplify that down and make that a positive 17. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just drop down the -24, because there's nothing, it doesn't have parentheses. I haven't done anything with it yet. Okay. So once I'm done with that, then all I have to do is the addition and subtraction. And again, I'm just going to work from the left side to the right side. So I'm going to change colors again. I'm going to take the -24 and combine it with the -12. This is a party. They're both negatives, so it's going to stay negative. And then 24 minus 12 more is going to be 36. And then I'm going to take my -36 and move down the line and combine it with the positive 17. A different way of thinking about this might be just dropping this positive 17 down, right? I'm combining those two together. Negative party or a battle. This is a battle. The negatives are going to win because there's more negative numbers here. And how many are they going to win by? 19. Now, if it's hard to calculate how many more in your head, just put that part in your calculator, okay? But I do want to make sure that you show me your work on these problems. So show me which numbers you're combining together in order to get your answer, okay? All right, last thing we're going to review is the order of operations. The operations are multiply, divide, right? Add, subtract. An operation, it could be parentheses. That's our, it could be exponents. Okay. The order of operations is the sequence that we follow in order to solve an equation or an expression, or simplify an expression. And we already talked about integers. They're positive or negative whole numbers. And exponents, remember, are exponent tells me how many of its base I multiply. Okay, so if I have 2 to the third power, the base of the exponent is the 2, and the exponent tells me how many 2's I'm multiplying. So this is the same as 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, so I'm not multiplying these two together, right? This exponent up here is telling me how many 2's I have. I have 1, 2, 3 2's. Okay, remember the order of operations is parentheses, exponents, this is multiply and divide. And really, you can do this in any order, but if you work from left to right, you won't go astray, okay? Try working left to right. You can do it in any order. If you can see that one thing's going to be way easier than the other, sometimes it's easier to multiply first and then divide. But if you are unsure what order you should multiply and divide in, just work left to right and you'll never go astray, okay? Same exact thing with addition and subtraction at the end. They can go in any order. Okay, so if there's something that you can see that's really easy to do, you can do them in any order. But I'm telling you that if you're unsure, then left to right is your new favorite thing. Just like you read a book from left to right. Okay, that's your new favorite best friend, is working any problem left to right. Okay, start with the parentheses, or if you have division, you might be grouping with a fraction bar. Okay, parentheses aren't actually the only grouping symbol at this step. There are some other grouping symbols that we might see this year, but parentheses are a good start there. Then exponents, anything that has this power. Then I do multiply and divide, then I do add and subtract. Okay, this is a problem that you can try on your own. Try and pause the video and tell me, is the answer 13 or 23? So pause the video, try it on your own using the order of operations, and see how you do. Okay, I'm going to work my way through it. Order of operations says parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look inside the parentheses right here. And once I get inside the parentheses, I go through the order of operations again. So if there was another set of parentheses inside, then I would have to start over inside those parentheses. And sometimes there are. Sometimes I have a problem that has a set of parentheses inside another set of parentheses. Okay? So we always have to check. But for this one, we can just move to the next step in our order of operations. It's exponents. And remember, when I have an exponent, it's telling me how many of these bases that I have. So this is going to be, this over here is going to be 2 times 2, which gives me a 4. Okay, so I simplified that. And then that 4 is inside the parentheses with this divide by 2. And so I'm going to take this and divide it by 2, which gives me a 2. Now I'm all done with all of this stuff inside of the parentheses. So I can now do my multiplying and dividing. Okay, and the only multiplying that I have is this -5 right outside. Remember, parentheses means simplify first and then multiply. And I always have to check for both. So once I've simplified what's inside the parentheses, then I have to check and see if there's anything out in front that I should be multiplying by. And in this case, what's out front? A -5. And if that's just a sign, like just a plain negative, then that's all I'm working with. But if it is a number, it's always a number and a sign. Okay? So if I have a number right there, then it's always a number and its sign. It could be just a plain negative like we had earlier. Or it could be a plain positive like we had earlier. But if there's a number there, then I always have to check for its sign as well. So I'm going to be multiplying a -5 by 2, and that's going to give me negative, because this one's positive, right? -10. And then everything else, now I've done all the multiplying and dividing. This one over here is a +13. It's going to drop down here. I'm just going to drop this other stuff down. And this 10 is out here in front, so I'm going to drop it down. And now I just have addition and subtraction. So I'm going to combine these two together, and I'm just going to work this thing left to right, just like I normally do. So 10 minus 10 gives me 0, and then I drop the +13 down, and that gives me 0 plus 13, which is just 13. And I could put +13 down here if I wanted to, or I could just write it as a plain 13. Okay? All right, so the answer to this one then was 13. Now I hope you tried it on your own, because some of this stuff we're still practicing. It can be a little bit tricky. Okay, so what counts as work on my homework assignment? Okay, well, as you go through the homework assignment, I want you to make sure that if you're combining some numbers together, then you give me some idea of what it was. Don't just go plug it in your calculator and give me a number. That's not what I want. I want to see what you're thinking about. I want to see, okay, I combined here and got 21. Then maybe I drop this down and get a divide by 7. Okay, so I can tell the thinking of both of these students here on the right, the one in the middle and the one on the right. I can see the thought process here. So these last two are great. I would give full credit. Now I've got my highlighter there. Let's get my pen. These two here, I would give you full credit for. So if you put this on your homework, great. If you just give me plain old numbers because you plugged it into your calculator and got an answer, well, congratulations, but that's not going to get you any credit. I'm going to send this back to you, and I'm going to ask you to redo it. I'm going to say I need to see some work. Okay? So just be thinking about that before you submit your assignments. Where's the tricky part? Well, here's exactly what I was talking about before. Remember in the order of operations, I told you that at this stage, when I'm looking at parentheses, that could also be the fraction bar. And I talked about that earlier too. I said we have to simplify the numerator and the denominator. And it happens at the very first step in my order of operations when I'm working on parentheses. If it helps you, kind of imagine in your mind that there's some invisible parentheses around the numerator and denominator. And because they're being grouped together. And I have to simplify first. Oh, whoops. I have to simplify first before I do any divide. And this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. I want to simplify first. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just recopying this, but I'm going to simplify this up here. 2 plus 1 is 3 over 3. This down here I didn't need to simplify. It was already simplified. Minus 5. Okay, so now I've just rewritten the problem, but I simplified the numerator up here. Now I can go ahead and do my dividing and my multiplying. So this is another place where maybe I want to choose if I want to multiply or divide first. And this is a good situation to, if I work left to right, I have to multiply by using this fraction right here. But I can divide first, and this would be a good time when maybe I want to divide before I do multiplying. Okay, because 3 divided by 3 is really super easy to do. That gives me 1, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just divide first and drop everything else back down before I multiply. Now I can do my multiplying right here. 5 times 1 is just 5, and then I just subtract 5 from it because that's this. Now I can do the subtraction because now I've taken care of everything else. 5 minus 5 gives me 0. Okay. So let's go through and let's just decide when are we going to use party and battle and when are we going to use multiply and divide rules. Okay? Well, the first thing, let's kind of start at the bottom here and work our way up. Down on the bottom, I have parentheses. That means what? You should pause the video right here and try and do some of these on your own. Then come back and check your work. Down here at the bottom, I have parentheses. Guess what that means? Multiply and divide. I'm going to use Dozy Man rules. Okay? Up here, I see in between those two integers, I have a dot. That dot means multiply. I'm going to use Dozy Man rules. Up here, there's no parentheses, there's no dot, so I'm going to use party versus battle. That's over here, right? Okay, up here, guess what? Parentheses, so I know I'm going to be using my multiplication man rules. Up here, ooh, tricky. Well, first, I have parentheses, so I know I'm going to use Dozy Man rules. But this one is one where I'm going to simplify that sign, and then I'm going to have an addition and subtraction. So I'm going to use Dozy Man, and then I'm going to use party versus battle in order to finish solving the problem. So this one is one where I have to simplify, right? Okay, same thing up here. I have a double sign, so that means first I use Dozy Man to simplify, and then I use party versus battle to complete this solution. All right, I hope that helps. I know that these can be tricky and they take practice. So remember, in Ms. Minor's class, we're going to just try, and sometimes we might not always get it right. Sometimes we might fail a couple of times before we get success. So keep trying and don't worry about it if you get it wrong, because we're just going to keep practicing this stuff. Okay, that's it for today. There are a couple little things on your assignment. There are some things where you have to substitute. I gave you like a B, B, C plus, let's say A, and then I told you B equals 3, C equals 4, A equals 1. right? Well, what you're doing is you're substituting numbers into an equation or an expression and then simplifying. When I have just two letters next to each other, just as a reminder, that's multiplication. So you're going to take these numbers, you're going to substitute them in where they belong. Okay, you're going to substitute those numbers in where they belong. So I'm going to rewrite this problem. What I like to do, let me get an extra page here. B, C plus A, where B, oh, well, that's not very good. Where B, let's say, is 3, C was 4, I think, and A was 1. Okay. So what I like to do when I have a problem like this that I'm doing some substituting in, I like to just go through and rewrite the problem, but with all parentheses instead of letters. Then I go back and I take the numbers and I put them into the parentheses where they belong. So B was a 3, C was a 4, and A was a 1. And now I have my problem all ready to go. Remember, now everything's in parentheses here, right? So I'm going to multiply these two together first. They are multiplication or division, so they go first in the order of operations. So 3 times 4 is 12, and then right over here, right? That's just plus 1. Oh, now I know I said parentheses or multiplication, but there's nothing else in here. Okay, let's do this. Let's think about it like it's multiplication, okay? Let me rewrite this. Plus 1. Now it's in parentheses. This is a positive 1. This would be like my double sign, right? But positive and positive is still just a positive 1. So that one's super easy to simplify. So we can kind of, when we get really comfortable with this stuff, we'll be able to kind of skip some of those steps. Okay. But if it helps you think about it always constantly the same way, then put those extra steps in there if you need them for a while. Okay. So the last thing I always do is party versus battle. Well, this one's super easy. 12 plus 1, right, is 13. Okay. So that's kind of how you do those. There are some problems on your assignment today that have some substitution in them. So be careful with those. If you have any questions, please email me and let me know, or you're welcome to come visit me after school, or I'm going to have a Google Meet here for my online kids. I'm going to be sending out an email about that shortly. So, all right. Thanks, guys.